The state of California is just figuring out that there are unintended consequences for all of the environmental regulations that they've passed. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. Alright, so I have an interesting article for you today, and it's coming out of the state of California. And as everyone knows, California is very left-leaning, very progressive, and they're always trying to push all these new rules, regulations, and laws to help the environment. And I guess they feel like they want, the Green New Deal to be there so that they can help the environment and make the world a better place. But what they didn't consider when they were coming up with all these laws and regulations was the effect that they have on housing costs and the affordability of housing in the state. So one of the examples that I seen was, they passed this law that said that all new housing had to have solar panels up on the roof, which seems like a great plan until you realize the cost of the solar panels. So we're already talking about the state in the entire country that has the most expensive housing, and then you throw on the fact that now we have to throw these $30,000 solar panels onto the roof of every new house that's being made, and guess what? New housing costs are higher than ever. I mean, it's a complete joke. So, yeah, this article really is going over this topic that, guess what? All these rules and stuff to help the environment are actually making it worse for tenants and making it a lot less affordable for them and harder for them to find places that they can actually afford to live in. But before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like and subscribe button, maybe leave a comment down below, and let me know what you think. Do you think that all these rules and environmental regulations, first of all, do you think that they're actually going to help anything in terms of the environment? I think the majority of them are not going to do much in terms of actually helping, okay? And I don't believe that if they can pass a law just in one state and then make a big impact in the entire world. I think what's going to happen instead is maybe the state of California will cut its carbon emissions, but the things that they did that created the amount of emissions, etc., for the environment, they're just going to move them over to a different state where they don't have those laws or rules. Or if the United States cuts its carbon emissions, they're going to move it to a different country. So if the other countries, if the entire world isn't participating in it, then there's going to be zero effect. It's not going to make any difference whatsoever, okay? That's why I don't believe in a lot of these regulations when it comes to the environment, okay? I think that they're a complete joke. It's become this big political thing, but one of the main issues has always been, how much is it going to actually cost? Will it actually benefit Americans in the long run? And will it make a difference? So if none of those things are true, then why are we doing it? But anyway, let's get into the article and see what it says. This article comes from calmatters.org, and it says, will the cost of LA's decarbonization lead to tenant evictions? Yeah, and it very well may. But let's see what they say in this article. And keep in mind, this is a more left-leaning article, but it does go over some good points, okay? And this is, I'll tell you what I think from the landlord's perspective. Los Angeles is in a state of emergency. Urban heat waves, rising sea levels, and wildfires are increasingly more common than they were a decade ago. In 2019, Mayor Eric Garcetti launched the Los Angeles Green New Deal, which lays out a roadmap to fight climate change in our city. One of the largest sources of greenhouse gas emissions in Los Angeles is buildings. Houses, apartment complexes, and commercial spaces constitute 41% of its greenhouse gas emissions. It is only logical that the LA Green New Deal has set a goal to decarbonize the entire building stock by 2050. While action to advance on this goal looms, city leaders must take care to consider how communities can be easily harmed by it and protect them. Tenants are in a state of crisis. Half of all renters spend more than 50% of their income on rent. Many have rental debt and are at risk of displacement due to COVID-19 related job loss. Households are cutting back on basic needs like food and clothing to be able to pay rent. Decarbonization could cause sharp increases in housing costs for tenants and make an already dire situation worse. Yeah, and These are good points, okay? Now, no matter where you stand on the issue of this decarbonization and this Green New Deal or whatever, right? Keep in mind that when it comes down to it, the basics are the same for with any other new rule or regulation that you put on a landlord. Every new rule, every new regulation you put on a landlord, we're passing those costs on to tenants, okay? That means that housing will become even less affordable. This is pretty common knowledge. I mean, think about it for a moment, okay? If I suddenly have to do a huge upgrade to decarbonize my building, then I'm going to have to pass that cost on to tenants in order to even get by, okay? I mean, it's no different than if I had to remove asbestos or take care of lead paint or get rid of mold or any of this other stuff that you already have to do. So, I mean, you throw this additional thing on top of a landlord. And I'm not saying that it's not going to be necessary. I'm just saying that we are going to have to pass these costs on to tenants, and that will make things worse for them. Decarbonization will require that landlords replace polluting natural gas appliances with cleaner electric ones. They'll also make other energy efficiency improvements such as upgrading the building's insulation, replacing windows, and installing solar panels in order to reduce the size of the building's carbon footprint and improve the home's air quality and comfort for residents. But it is expensive, up to $28,200 per housing unit, and tenants may be forced to foot the bill. The city's existing laws allow landlords to pass the bulk of decarbonization costs on the tenants. Yep, and that's exactly what we're going to do, okay? $28,200 per housing unit. So, reading over what they want us to do, they want us to install the solar panels, and I just talked about that, but I didn't know this thing about getting rid of gas appliances, which doesn't make a lot of sense to me because gas is a very clean burning fuel, and there's just unbelievably huge amounts of gas reserves all over the world. We're not going to run out of natural gas for thousands of years, even at our current increase in rate of consumption. I've looked this stuff up before. It doesn't really make much sense. Plus, it's cheap. Okay, so if our goal is to keep people, housed with, as minimal impact as possible, natural gas is actually a pretty good thing to do. To use. So, it doesn't make much sense to me, but for the people who believe in this climate stuff, they're so worried about it that they're going to push us to using electric. And guess what? The problem is that we don't, the renewable sources of electricity. Guess what? A lot of power plants are running off of natural gas. Come on. Maybe not in California, but they think that wind turbines and solar panels are going to be able to prevent everything, or not prevent, but produce enough electricity for everyone, and it's just not capable of doing that yet. Whatever. The point of this article, it isn't for me to just start dogging on this Green New Deal and all of this environmental stuff. But the point of this is to point out the fact that, yes, landlords are going to pass these costs on to tenants. Okay? For those Los Angeles renters fortunate enough to live in a rent-stabilized building, annual rent increases are capped at 3 to 5%. But a city cost recovery program called the Primary Renovation Work Program allows landlords to increase rent by an additional 10% in order to recoup the cost of decarbonization. So yeah, the city has already passed a law that says that, hey, if we're forcing landlords to upgrade these buildings for our Green New Deal, then those landlords are able to raise rents by an additional 10% on top of the 3% or 3 to 5%. So, it might be as much as 15% rent increase for rent stabilized. That's apartments and buildings that are under rent control. So, that's bad news for tenants. Too bad for them, though. Okay, blame your city. Blame your city for passing laws that are not in your favor. Okay, that's not the fault of landlords. And I still feel bad for landlords because that alone might not be enough to pay for these expensive upgrades. That's how ridiculous all of this is. A sweeping decarbonization mandate would increase rent burdens for tenants and prompt a citywide spike in prices across the city's rent-controlled housing stock. And the price increases would be permanent. Because the primary renovation work program does not require landlords to undo the rent increase even after they've covered the renovation costs. If this happens, severely rent-burdened households will be faced with a hard choice to make. Decarbonization could also motivate landlords to try to evict vulnerable tenants. LA's rent stabilization law, which covers over half the city's rental housing, controls rent prices only during the term of a renter's tenancy. When the tenant leaves the home, the landlord is allowed to raise the rent as much as they like. These policies create an incentive for landlords to displace tenants who pay low rents. Yeah, okay, all of that is true. The problem really, though, lies in the whole rent stabilization policies and any of these new additional laws that they're putting on to the landlords that are making them upgrade the housing stock. So, yeah, I mean, it's a bad thing for tenants. These landlords, all they're trying to do is recoup the cost of these expensive upgrades that the city is forcing upon them. So if these people, if they're really mad at anyone, they should be mad at the government for putting this ridiculous stuff in place in the first place, okay? But no, I mean, the real people who are suffering, they're not the environmentalists, okay? They're not the people who are out there marching, with Greenpeace and trying to save the world from, global warming or whatever, right? The people who are suffering are just the working class people who want a nice, affordable place to live within the city of LA so they can take care of their families. That's it. Okay, they don't care about the politics of the issue. They don't care about, what's going on in the rest of the world. All they need is a place to live, and you're making it harder for them. You're making it harder for us too as landlords by passing all this stuff, but we're just passing the cost on to you and everyone else. So, yeah, interesting story coming out of LA. I'm not surprised. No landlord is really surprised. What really surprises me is that just now they are figuring all of this out.